Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Jen from Ezekiel Effect Ministries, and today I'm going to just share my testimony about how I met my husband, Daniel. And we're probably going to break this up into a couple different parts, and then he's going to be able to give his side of the story as well. So I'm going to do my best to just kind of give you the general outline. And there's a lot of prophetic things that took place during the journey. So some of it, might seem a little bit far out there and weird, but I believe it was from the Lord. So so the journey started probably a little over a year ago in May of 2023. Well, actually before that, the Lord had told me that I was supposed to start going to Chicago House of Prayer back in the late fall of 2022, early winter. And I procrastinated a bit. They have services on Fridays and Mondays, and they do worship and just soaking time with the Lord. And I knew a lot of the people from Shy Hop, and they were great, and I was excited to go, but I had just kind of procrastinated. So I finally started going in January of 2023. And I really, really loved it. I received so much healing. The Lord knew I needed a lot of heart healing. I had gone through a divorce 2 years before, and I just was still doing a lot of healing. And you know how when you get in a corporate setting of worship, there's just different levels of healing. The Lord will do different types of healing depending on the anointing that's present. And so I received a lot of healing and connected with a lot of amazing people during my time at Shy Hop. And I remember in May of that year, I didn't know Daniel yet, but he had been a part of Shy Hop for a long time. And I knew of him. I mean, I'd said hi and whatever, just very briefly, but he was on the worship team, and he played the guitar and the trumpet, and occasionally he would sing and lead worship. And so I knew of him. And one day it was his birthday, and they were talking about Daniel, and one of our pastors was just sharing really, really beautiful things about his character and about his knowledge of the Bible and just how he admired Daniel. And I just kind of tucked that away in the back of my head because I thought, ooh, that's good, and I didn't really know why. But then later that month, we had a Pentecost service with a whole bunch of our churches together, and it was a really beautiful service, and he was on part of the big worship group again. And there was some period of time when the Lord just highlighted Daniel to me, and in my head I'm thinking, he's totally not my type. Why are you highlighting him to me, Lord? But I tucked it away. And then a couple months later, we were at a summer worship event over at GGG out in Waterman, and he was on the worship team again. And it was the summertime, of course, so he had his shoes off, he was barefoot, and he was just really worshiping his heart out. And I saw a different side of him, and I just really saw him expanding and really just reaching out to the Lord, and just in a different kind of a way. And I saw sort of like, the Lord was sharing, like, this is really like what his spirit is. He's a worshiper. And again, I just tucked it away. Didn't really know why. And sure enough, come early September last year, a couple months later, the Lord just kind of nudged me to start talking to him one Friday night when I was at Shy Hop. And he was very introverted. And so I knew that he probably wasn't going to come up to me, but I just went over and just started kind of playfully nudging him and talking to him. And we just kind of got into a conversation. And then the next night we were at another worship event, and we just started talking also. And he shared with me that night that he was a rock climber. And I would not have guessed that. I knew nothing about rock climbing, although I've done some indoor rock climbing, just a few times. But he shared with me that he does that. He does outdoor rock climbing, and he's really good. And he told me that he had been skydiving, but he was not afraid when he did it. So I'm thinking, oh man, you're one of these excitement seekers. Nothing scares you. But there was a part of me that just settled. There's a part of me that was like, oh, that makes me feel really secure that he's like not afraid of anything. Because he was like, yeah, you just have to trust your equipment. And me, being deathly afraid of heights was like, oh, okay. Like, that's good to have somebody that's not afraid, because I would really be afraid if I was doing something like that. Or at least I thought. So anyway, he invited me to go with a group rock climbing thing up in Wisconsin, and I was like, no, I don't think I'm ready for that. I've never even done it. I think, maybe we'll just go like indoor sometime, because he'd gone to a bunch of gyms and he went regularly. So I was like so confused. I was like, I don't know if he's actually like thinking of me just as a friend, or if he's like thinking that he might want to date me. But we exchanged phone numbers. It was his idea. And so I ended up telling the Lord, the Lord just was like, no, this isn't the right time. And I just was like, I can't go, but maybe another time. Maybe I'll go with you like on an indoor thing sometime. Or maybe I didn't even say that at that point. I just think I was like, no. And so I ended up following up a few days later. I was like, well, maybe, I could take a rain check. I didn't want him to feel like I was rejecting him, which he didn't, but that was my thought. So I was like, well, maybe I can just take a rain check, and he's like, oh, I go every Wednesday night. I go to Lifetime Fitness and I rock climb there. They have a really nice gym and everything. And so I was like, okay. And I had been asking the Lord, is this something you want me to do? And so when he said that, I was like, oh, okay. I said, well, I'm free tonight. I'm not doing anything. And he was like, oh, okay, why don't you meet me there? So I did. So I ended up meeting him there, and he showed me the rock climbing, and it was really fun. And I started calling him Spider-Man that night. So this is the first of the prophetic Spider-Man signs. He didn't even tell me that that's what his nickname was. I just saw him climbing up the ceiling and down the walls really quickly. He looked like Spider-Man. And I was like, oh my gosh, you look like Spider-Man. And he laughed when he got back, because he was like, yeah, that's my nickname. And he showed me pictures, and he actually has a whole costume, and he's worn it on a number of occasions for different things. But he's worn it rock climbing, and he has pictures, and it's really funny. I'll have to post one if he gives me permission for you to see it. But anyway, that was prophetic. And so after that, now where I used to live in Illinois before I moved to Florida, there were spiders all around that house, and sometimes in the house, and it was just it was like on like a wooded area. But I kept seeing spiders, and just randomly, not even trying to look at these things, but I kept seeing spiders everywhere. Even when I wasn't at home, I kept seeing spiders. I kept seeing Spider-Man things. Never been on my radar before this, but I started seeing these things. I wasn't looking for them. And so the following week, I had just been like, we had talked about maybe going out to eat or something like that, but I really didn't know how he felt about me. And I just thought he was super cute and really sweet, and I wanted to go out with him. And I told my daughter, I texted her, I'm like, we're going rock climbing. I met this really great guy at church. And she was like, oh, is he crushing on you? And I was like, I don't know, we'll see. But I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. And so I had asked the Lord, if you want him and I to like hang out, give me some kind of a word, that you can confirm that like nobody else would know. And so he gave me the word that I came up with. It's a town in New York, and it's not even just a town in New York, but buffalo. That was the word. And I was thinking about the animal buffalo. So I'm in the kitchen in the morning. I'm like, Lord, okay, what's a word that you can confirm that if we're supposed to hang out again, that, you can confirm this? And I heard the word buffalo in my head. And I was like, all right. So Lord, if you want Daniel and I to hang out, then please confirm the word buffalo. So I'm going about my day. Sure enough, one of my clients cancels later in the day. She texts me and she goes, I have to cancel because I'm flying to Buffalo tomorrow. I was like, what? You could tell I'm like getting emotional. She was going to Buffalo. You just can't make this stuff up. And so I was like, okay, Lord. So anyway, I just texted him. I was like, I think I said something like, so do you want to hang out or something like that? Because I had been watching some YouTube videos. I mean, I'd been out of the dating scene for, 20 some years. I don't know like what this is all about. So I'd been watching a lot of videos, and what I was learning about was that the man has to pursue the woman, but sometimes the woman has to give the man cues. The woman has to tell the man she's interested. So that's kind of what the Lord was telling me, was like, let him know you're interested, but he needs to be the one to like do the asking and things like that. So that's kind of how it was. I was letting him take the lead. So I texted him. I don't even know what I texted him. I'd have to look back, but something about, do you want to hang out sometime or something like that. And he was like, oh yeah, what did you have in mind? So we talked, and we ended up deciding he was going to come out my way because he lived like an hour away. And he was going to come out my way, and we were going to go paddleboarding, because it was like early October. Yeah, first week of October, right around this time last year. That's why I'm reminiscing about this. So he ends up coming over, and we decided not to go on the river, but we just went on the lake that's nearby, and we started talking and, just sharing a little bit of our history and whatnot. And he didn't know I had 4 kids and 4 dogs, and I was divorced. He thought I was like in my 40s, early 40s or something like that. And I was like, no, I was 51 at the time. I was like, no, I'm 51. And he was like, oh, wow. And he basically told me that, and we were just talking. This all came out later, but we were just talking and just sitting on my porch afterwards, having a nice evening. And, I asked him, do you like to dance? And he's telling me he likes to dance. And it got a little flirty. I asked him to slow dance. And we did for like 30 seconds. And then I think he thought like, oh, I think I'm crossing a line. She's just a friend. Like, I don't think I should do this. And there was a part of me that was disappointed, because I was like, oh, maybe he doesn't feel the same. But then he said something like, I don't know, he kind of alluded to his past, and he said something like, if you knew what I had done, or if you knew who I was, or something like that, basically like, you wouldn't think the same about me. And I just was like, we've all done things. I've done things, and I already knew what was going on. Which is a whole nother story. But basically, the night ended where, we were flirting a little bit, and then he realized like that I actually was interested in him. Like, it just didn't occur to him. It did not occur to him, but he realized I was interested in him. And so he was like gonna think about it, and think about, well, whether we could date or whatever. And that's when he was asking me the questions about, what's your status and all that kind of stuff. And so I told him, and he was like, well, I really want to have kids, so I don't know. It seems like you've already kind of gone through your life. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's true. I never really had considered that. But I said, I think I'll pray about it. I'm not ruling it out. It didn't occur to me that he would want to have kids, But since he did, I was like, well, of course I'm going to ask the Lord. I mean, I didn't shoot it down. I didn't actually feel like a no. I felt very peaceful about it when he said it. It didn't feel like, oh my gosh, no way, But I was just going to take it to the Lord, and I did. And so a few days later we talked or whatever, and he just was like very unsure. And I just said, you have to make your own decision. But I said, I did hear from the Lord, and I have peace. If we're meant to have children, I said, I'm open to it. And he was really surprised. And he was like, well, how do you even know you could? Your ovaries still work? I was like, my body's healthy. If the Lord wants us to have kids, if we end up dating and get married and he wants us to have kids, then it'll happen, And I really had peace about it, which surprised the heck out of me. It just really surprised me, to be honest. It was not ever something I had thought about. I have 2 biological kids. I have 2 adopted kids. I was done birthing children back then. But, when you love somebody, all things can change. If the Lord wants it, he'll change our hearts. And that's what he did. He just kind of helped me to be in more of an open heart posture. I'll just say it like that. And I wasn't going to worry about the future. So a week later, he decides, and meanwhile, I'm still getting all these, signs of Spider-Man. And we had actually also planned to go to a John Christ concert. He was coming in concert to a town nearby, and we had planned to go as friends. But when he got in his sort of very undecided place, I just was having a lot of second thoughts. I was like, well, maybe we're not going to go. Maybe if he doesn't want to date me, then I'm not going to go. I don't want to just go for just friends. That's going to be so weird, And I just kept pleading with the Lord that week. And I was going out of town. I was coming down here to Florida to go to my conference that I always went to. So I went down with a friend, and I hadn't really heard from him. And the day I was flying down, he texted me when we landed. He texted me. And he actually texted me like some emojis, and he said something like, I really enjoyed our time last week together. I hope, I've been taking Hebrew, so he's like, I hope your Hebrew lesson's been going well. And he had an emoji, like a smiley face and a heart or something like that. And I told my friend Deidre, I was like, this man never uses emojis. He's a man of few words. And look what he's writing here. And I just started jumping around. I had the joy of the Lord on the plane. I was just like, okay, I think he's interested. And so I just wrote him back and I said, yeah, I had a great time too. And yeah, I'm actually headed down to Fort Lauderdale right now. And, maybe we can catch up when I get back. And so sure enough, the Lord gave me a word for him while I was down there too that I sent him. And the whole time I kept getting all these Spider-Man confirmations. The Lord just wanted to reassure me that, I have picked out this person. Like, I knew in my head that the Lord had picked this man out. I knew I was not going to be a good picker. I knew I was not going to be a good judge of character per se on my own. I knew the Lord had to do it. And he literally was like picking this man out. I never would have done it myself. And the same, I think, was true for him. He, wouldn't have necessarily thought that, that I was the person for him. I'll let him tell the story, but I just knew the Lord was picking Daniel out. And the more I got to know him, the more I just was really, really, really fond of him. I just thought he was adorable. There's some other pieces to the story too, that I forgot to share. So I had been on a walk one day, and I got a prophetic vision about Israel, because Daniel had been taking a sabbatical from work last year. And so he said he wanted to travel while he was on his sabbatical. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I want to go back to Israel. And he was like, oh yeah, I might go back to Israel too. And so one day I'm on my walk, and the Lord says to me, give him some figs, because I'd been eating figs. And he was like, give Daniel a bag of figs. And I kept hearing the first taste of Israel. So I gave him this prophetic gift, and I said, this is the first taste of Israel. And he was like, what in the world? And I was like, this is from the Lord, And he tried to give me a gift back, and it was like some kind of apple butter or something. And I should have just said, oh, thank you, I really received that. But I was like, oh no, I don't eat sugar, I can't take this. And I was like, what were you thinking? I apologized. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I think he was rejected. He felt rejected, but I apologized. And we're not really gift giver people anyway, but that was really cool. So we ended up, when I got back from Florida, meeting up at Chai Hop again the following week, and we sat next to each other and we were talking, and I was like, so what do you think? And he was like, well, I think I want to go forward. I think I want to date you. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And so we did. We started off. So I think I'm going to end here. This is probably a good resting place because we're about 19 minutes in. But I will finish. I'll tell more of the testimonies, more of my testimony about our dating, that chapter, on the next video. So this is part 1. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and part 2 up soon. All right. Shalom. Be blessed.